Hey everyone, it's JD from Wildwood. I'm going to show you how to take data. You might have it sitting in an Excel sheet, a Google sheet, someplace, and you're not quite sure how you're going to make use of it. You know that people can build apps, but you just don't know how to, right? You want to turn it into something useful so you can manipulate it. This is an app I built with this data up here. This is fake, by the way. I generated this in an LLM. I gave it one example of me. I'm the fake Jimmy Goldstein here, and then it spit me out more fake data. So this is not real. Now, what I then did is I built this website using, we'll talk more about that later, the specific technologies, but I built it using ChatGPT, which sounds crazy, but if you know how to ask ChatGPT, the thing that you're used to making cover letters for or resumes for, it can program too. It'll give you the exact code that you need to copy and paste. You won't need to do any fine tuning. And when you do need to do fine tuning, you're going to do it in English. So I shouldn't say you're not going to do any fine tuning. What I mean is you're not going to do any programming. Your programming is going to be English. Or if you speak Spanish, and video is translated to Spanish or some other language, you will program in your native language. You're going to tell ChatGPT what you want, and there's a specific way to do it. If you don't prompt well, if you don't know how to ask it well, if you don't know the structure, it's not going to give you good information. Also, as a note here, I'm using ChatGPT o1 Pro. I also recommend o1 Regular, which is available in the Plus plan. It's $20 a month. It's a really good value. There's also Claude 3.5 by Anthropic, which is really good. Now, what's next? You're going to learn how to ask it. It's going to give you code that looks like this, which you do not need to understand. All you got to do is copy and paste it. It'll do all the work for you. And it's going to tell you about how to debug it too. So when it gives you an error or something doesn't work, great. ChatGPT works for you. You just have to tell it. And then finally, when you are ready to start, you're going to know how to prompt for coding. You are a programmer. You're just going to program in your own native language, and you're going to use an LLM, a large language model. If you ask it the right way, it will give you back good code. There is a structure to this. Now, first and foremost, protect private data. Don't put any data on the ChatGPT or any LLM that is private. Definitely no student information should ever go in there. It'll work just as well with fake data. And oftentimes I won't even give it any data. I will say exactly what the structure is, and it'll still work. So you can make it work without it. And just so you know, these apps that I build a lot of times, they're on private intranets. So if you have Google Workspace and there's an IT department and they've given you a Google login or a Microsoft SharePoint login, chances are they've given you some sandboxed software that you can either run locally or on your intranet that is very secure. I'm not going to get into the details about that, but if you use Google Apps script, it is sandboxed into and you can control the privacy. So if you have it set only to you, your Google Sheet only to you, that information will not be available to other people as long as you don't deploy it so other people can see it. So consult your IT professional to make sure you're doing that correctly if you're unsure. Now, step number one, in your prompt, and it's going to be a big, long prompt. If you go back to the ChatGPT screenshot that I have earlier, you're going to paste this big, long thing in. Step number one of that big, long thing that you're going to send to ChatGPT is describe your app. What is it you're looking to build? Tell them why. If there's any specific technologies, in this case, I'm using Google Sheets. Mention that. If you want a specific other technology, you got to tell them. They might default to something else. They will tell you how to implement all these things. That's what's amazing. In addition to giving you the code to copy and paste, you are going to be able to learn how to implement it too. And then finally, you need to tell it like what are all the functionality you need to have, like filtering and sorting, etc. Now, here is an example prompt for the app description. I have student tardy data in a Google spreadsheet. I need to work with the data in the sheet student data. I would like that. And I'm going to tell it more and more and more, describing the data source, the functionality, and the user features. Next, you're going to describe how the data is laid out. You need to be exact here. Ideally, you'll give it a screenshot, or you'll paste it in as CSV data, or you'll paste it in as JSON data. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, that's okay. Try and describe it in your natural language. What I would not recommend doing is just like copying it, pasting it, because it probably won't copy and paste correctly. Here is a prompt data layout description. Each row represents one student on a particular day. Column A is the student name. Column B is the student ID. I'm going to write all that out in English in my native language. If you don't leave anything for the LLM to guess. The more specific you are, the better. I hear my son yelling for me in the background. Hello, I'm making a video. You're welcome to come in. Then explain the trends as well. So if, for example, the student is on more than one row, and maybe you have the repeating ID number a few rows, well, I know, because I've looked at the data, that means that student had multiple absences or tardies on multiple days. That's what multiple rows means if the same data is featured more than once. I'm going to tell ChatGPT that in English. I'm going to tell it, as I mentioned, exactly as much as possible and include the screenshot or the CSV. Then I'm going to describe in English exactly the app features. How I want it to filter, how I want it to sort, how many views there are. You can read my prompt and see exactly what I mean. What I should see. If you want a table, tell it you want a table. If you want a chart, tell it you want a chart. You have to be exact. Get a visual in your head before you go. Sketch it out, write it down or type it down, and then read it over a few times, because don't leave anything out that you want in your app. You got to tell it. Then prompting best practices, use formal language, use periods, break it in a numbered list if your prompt is really long. That's the one thing I would say about my prompt that could be improved, is it could be a numbered list. I also like to write my prompts out in a Google Doc. Think about them, edit them, go through a few iterations on that document. Then I paste that into ChatGPT, because I want to get the prompt right. I want to be specific. I want to think about, what does this app need that I'm not thinking of? What should ChatGPT know about the data that I'm not thinking of? Visual design. Tell it what it should look like. You want it to be blue? You can just do a basic search. And I know, for example, like Tailwind or Bootstrap looks pretty good. These are free open source frameworks. And as long as I reference an open source framework and I can tell it the name, it'll go make it look like that. Now, I might need to refine it later, but we're going to start with really good here. And now, here's the most important thing. You wrote this big, long prompt. You shot it into ChatGPT. It gave you a bunch of code. You followed the directions. Maybe you were doing a Google app script to work with your Google Sheets. You pasted it in and you ran it. You listened to everything it said and it didn't work. You're like, man, the app almost works, but this part doesn't. Well, you have to refine and expand, and you're going to have to iterate. ChatGPT works for you, so don't worry. It will debug for you. It's really fast. It's faster than almost any other programmer you're ever going to hire. So, and it's not going to complain. So you got to be specific about the errors you're getting, and you got to be persistent. Tell it to rewrite it. Tell it to give you the whole code. That's really important for me. Is at the end of a lot of prompts, I'll say, give me the entire code for maybe it's the .gs file or the .html file, so I can copy and paste the entire thing. I don't want just snippets. I don't want little explainers. I got to do this. The fewer things I got to copy and paste, the better. Give me the entire code. Tell it. Be demanding. And if it doesn't work, say, hey, everything works except this section, ... This should be happening when I click this. This should happen when I do that. Be specific, then tell it, rewrite the entire code if it's not working. Because you can be demanding, you can expect excellence, and it will provide. Here's the whole prompt. You can see the whole thing here. It is very detailed. I would take your time and read it either here, or I'm going to post it down below in the YouTube video. And you're going to get a really good idea of what I mean by the more specific the prompt, the better the code ChatGPT is going to output. And then very, very important, don't use old models. If you do the same prompt in the ChatGPT 3.5 or 4, the code is not going to be that good. There's a major difference. So ideally spend the $20 for Plus, or use Anthropic Claude, which is also a great programming model, because you're not going to get good code for free. Maybe it's unfortunate, but you do have to pay a little bit for this. But it's not like you're going to be able to hire a great programmer of this competency for $20. So good luck. Make something. I'm going to paste the prompt down below, but also I'm going to have some more resources like this entire presentation at my website, which I'll feature down below in the AI stuff section.